The day my husband placed a power of attorney in front of me, asking me to hand over the right to let him decide everything for me, I understood something brutal. If I hadn't hidden the apartment I inherited, I would have signed my own sentence. That realization didn't hit me all at once. It came in pieces, in glances, in touches, in silences. Damon was never the kind of man who made scenes, who yelled, who slammed doors. He hurt differently, quietly, with phrases that sounded reasonable on the surface, with that air of, I know what's best for us. And for a long time, I believed him. That particular day, he walked into the house different. Not different on the outside, same dark suit, same organized briefcase, same expensive cologne that always arrived before he did. But his eyes were sharper. They didn't look for me like someone who'd missed me. They scanned me like someone reviewing a report. He made his usual loop around the living room, a pattern I had learned too well, checking the bookshelf, the table, the mail left on the console, anything that might reveal a movement I'd made without his pre-approval. It was as if every day he walked into the house conducting an inspection, an audit, as if I were an employee required to account for every inch of space I used. That day, though, there was a new detail. He opened the drawer where I kept a few personal documents and found the padlock. Nothing dramatic, tiny, discreet, almost symbolic. But men like Damon do not tolerate locks on anything they believe belongs to them. "Why is this locked?" he asked, not even pretending to respect the fact that he was going through something that was mine. I took a breath, already knowing every answer would be dissected word for word. Because it has my things, personal things, stuff I want to keep organized. He laughed, but not with humor. He laughed with disdain. "Maya, everything that's ours should stay open. What secret could you possibly have from me?" The word ours landed with the weight of possession. In that moment, I wasn't a person with boundaries. I was another compartment of the house, another area to be accessed, organized, monitored. And right then, with him holding that locked drawer, my mind leapt to the key sewn into the inner lining of my purse, the key to my aunt's apartment, the apartment he never knew existed. A shiver ran up my back, so sharp, so physical, I had to steady myself on the edge of the table. It wasn't just fear, it was my body telling me, "Good thing you never told him." I couldn't explain it with words, but my gut knew if Damon ever found out about that place, he would do to the apartment exactly what he was doing to me. He would analyze it, enclose it, put it under his name. He'd create some polished speech like, "We should centralize everything so it doesn't cause tax issues." And by the time I realized it, I wouldn't have anything that was truly mine. He let go of the drawer and shrugged, as if he'd decided to give me a free pass for the day. He walked into the living room, opened his briefcase, spread some papers across the table, and called me with a tone that sounded sweet but wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. "Come here for a minute. We need to take care of something important." I went, because at that point, I was still the woman who believed avoiding conflict was the safest way to survive a marriage. When I sat down, he didn't look me in the eyes at first. He straightened the pages, aligned the corners, double-checked something he already knew by heart. It was theater. He loved playing the role of the responsible, reasonable, organized man, the one who makes difficult but necessary decisions. Only after letting the suspense grow did he push an envelope toward me. "This is just to organize things for us as a couple." I already knew when he started a sentence with "just," something big was coming. "What things?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He smiled. Can you call it a smile when the mouth curves but the eyes stay cold? "Our life, Maya, our assets, our future. You know that after your aunt's inheritance, everything got more complicated, and I'm trying to simplify, as always." The inheritance. The apartment. My heart kicked in my chest like it was trying to escape before I could. I opened the envelope carefully, my fingers tingling. And there it was, black on white, a broad, sweeping power of attorney. A document that would give Damon total authority to sign for me, move my assets, sell anything under my name, including what he didn't even know existed. For a few seconds, the world blurred. I heard his voice explaining, in that steady tone that no longer fooled me, that it was just to make things easier, that marriage is about trust, that when you love someone, you don't complicate things. But something in me finally refused. It wasn't a no, I said out loud. It was a no that rose from my skin. While he talked about trust, I remembered the conversation I overheard on speakerphone. While he talked about our future, I remembered his friend laughing and saying, "A woman in love is easy." While he talked about protection, I remembered him opening my drawers without asking. At that moment, everything became painfully clear. Damon wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to own me. He only valued what he could control, and anything outside of that became a threat, including the apartment, including the part of me that still wanted to live. He handed me the pen, confident. "Sign right here. I already signed my part. You trust me, don't you?" I held the pen. It felt heavy in my hand, like a weapon I was about to turn against myself. I could have given in. I had given in for years. I had surrendered so many smaller things. But this was different. I looked at him, looked at the document, thought of the apartment, the hidden key, my aunt telling me to take care of myself. And with my heart racing, I handed the pen back. "I trust you, but I learned from you that we shouldn't make big decisions on impulse. I want to read it carefully." His mask cracked for a second. It was quick, but I saw it. His jaw tightened, his eyes hardened, his finger pressed the table. "You don't need that, Maya. You're complicating something simple." But in that instant, watching irritation leak through his rehearsed calm, the truth landed fully. I wasn't complicating anything. I was protecting myself. I didn't sign that day. And he didn't forget it. Neither did I. Because at that moment, I realized the apartment I had hidden out of fear would be the very thing that saved me when love turned into threat. I just had no idea how far he would go to break me after that. Before the inheritance, I was already shrinking inside my own marriage, but I still called it routine. That's how so many of us survive. We rename abuse as care, control as concern, silence as peace. I kept telling myself Damon was just a detail-oriented man, someone who liked order, who wanted what was best for us. And it's incredible how far we can go believing that, while our soul gets smaller, tighter, pushed into a corner of the house where no one can see it. But after the inheritance, that discomfort got a name. It changed the air in the house. It changed his touch. It even changed the way he walked down the hallway. Before, when Damon came home, he had a ritual that hurt more than I ever admitted. His eyes swept through the living room like a supervisor inspecting a workspace. He straightened throw pillows that were off by an inch. He turned jars around, closed doors, picked up receipts and mail I'd left on the table, not to help, but to evaluate. I lived with the constant feeling that I was being tested without knowing what the test was. But after the inheritance, it got more obvious. His gaze wasn't just checking anymore, it was claiming. And the worst part is that before I understood that, I still tried to interpret everything as affection. When my aunt passed away, I was devastated. She was my safe place, my emotional shelter, the only person who reminded me I existed outside the roles of wife, stepdaughter, stepmom, or caretaker. During that time, I barely slept, barely ate. And when the news came about the apartment in my name, it was like my grief got mixed with shock. I didn't know what I'd do with that place, and I didn't even want to think about it yet. Damon, however, thought for me. In the first few days after the news, he got strange, but not cold. He became too gentle. His touch changed. Before, it was rushed. Now, it was slow. He'd set his hand on my shoulder with a calculated weight, rest his hand on my waist like someone measuring property lines, hug me like he was testing the condition of a structure. It felt like my body had become the front door to a newly discovered asset. I remember the day that became crystal clear. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when he came up behind me and put his hands on my waist. He never did that without a purpose. "You doing okay?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "Not really. Still feels strange." He nodded slowly, like he was absorbing useful information. I was thinking, when Damon said that, it was never about feelings. We could use this moment to reorganize our life, remodel some things, sign a few new contracts, get everything set up the way we want it. We want it. But I could feel it. It was the way he wanted. A few days later, he brought home renovation catalogs, kitchen layouts, quotes, spreadsheets, everything in his name. "It's just to make things easier," he said, with that sharp smile of someone who knows exactly where he's heading. "You don't need to worry about anything, babe. Let me handle it." But why exactly was I supposed to let him handle everything? The detail that stuck with me most happened on a random morning. He was dressed to leave, and before heading out, he cupped my face gently, a gentleness that felt overly rehearsed. "Maya, now that you've got this apartment, we need to think about the future, right? How we can put everything together." Put everything together. That phrase came out of his mouth like a threat, not like partnership. And the micro injustices started multiplying, like hairline cracks I'd been pretending not to see. If I took too long at the store, he wanted to know which aisle I'd spent so much time in. If I put something away in the bedroom, he moved it, just to improve organization. He started criticizing my personal spending. "You really need to learn to be more responsible." He began suggesting that I check with him before buying anything bigger. He'd tell his mother I was terrible with money. Those small hits, which used to hurt quietly and alone, now lined up into a terrifying pattern. He didn't want a marriage. He wanted a managed system. Little by little, even his touch carried that weight. Affection became currency. Attention only came after some talk about contracts, renovations, documents. Affection wasn't spontaneous. It was an investment, a strategy. Then came the micro-injustice that changed everything. I was folding clothes in the bedroom when I heard laughter from the kitchen. Damon was on speakerphone with his usual friend, the one he treated like a personal life consultant. I was about to walk in smiling, a habit I'd picked up to prevent conflict, but I froze when I heard my name. "She's going to put everything in my name, relax. She's just a little sensitive about the aunt dying." His friend laughed. "A woman in love is easy, Damon." Damon's laugh followed. "I know how to steer things." Steer? Steer who? A car? An employee? A person with no will of her own? Right there, in that exact moment, the wound I'd been carrying for years finally split open. I closed the door quietly so he wouldn't hear. And for the first time in my life, I understood it wasn't me exaggerating. It wasn't me being too sensitive. It wasn't grief talking. It was control, manipulation, silence, abuse. And in that instant, my aunt's apartment stopped being just a memory. It became a plan, a defense, a future. Because if he only sees what he can control, I needed to keep invisible whatever was still mine. I just had no idea his next move would be so direct, so cold, so dangerous. And I had no idea how far he was willing to go to make sure I never had anything outside his reach. I like to think the truth doesn't arrive screaming. It comes like a light scratch, repeated over and over until the skin finally breaks. And that's exactly how I began to see Damon for who he really was. Not through one dramatic moment, but through tiny fractures, tiny movements only a woman who lives in fear can recognize. After the inheritance, after his shift in behavior, after the calculated touch, I started paying attention, not out of curiosity, out of instinct. A woman living with a controlling man learns to listen to what isn't said, to feel what isn't shown, to notice where the air gets heavier in her own home. And the air in that house had become unbearable. Damon walked differently, not with a decisive stride he used to have, but with a pace that measured distances, observing, assessing, calculating. He began noticing things far too small: how long I spent in the shower, how many minutes I took on a walk, how long I stayed at the store. He asked how my day had been, not because he cared, but because he wanted to cross-check information. And it was in that climate that the speakerphone conversation happened, the conversation that opened the door to hell. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot, trying to pretend things were normal. Damon was in the living room on a call with his usual friend, the one he treated like a private advisor. I heard the click of the call Dang answered, and then the sound expanded. He had put it on speaker. For a few seconds, just laughter, and then a sentence that froze my entire body. I'm only going to relax when she puts everything in my name. The spoon slipped from my hand. Metal hit the tile and echoed through the kitchen, but he didn't hear it, or chose not to. My heart stopped. I felt the blood drain from my hands. And then came the response. A woman in love is easy, Damon. You just have to steer her. Steer. That word slid into my mind like a blade. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a partner. I was a project, a pending acquisition. I stood there, unable to inhale for several seconds. And in that suffocating silence, I understood nothing happening around me was random. The sudden affection, the renovations, the contracts he wanted to help with, the drawers he opened without asking, his discomfort with the inheritance that wasn't his. He didn't love who I was. He loved what I had and what he could take. From that moment, something inside me shifted. A door opened, and on the other side wasn't love, but strategy. I went to the bedroom with trembling hands, sat on the edge of the bed trying to process everything. My heart was pounding up in my throat. And for the first time, I felt afraid not of what he might find out, but of what he already knew. I tried to calm down, but my mind was faster. I began analyzing everything: his schedule, the subtle changes in how he moved my belongings, the questions he asked when I went out alone. And that's when the impulse struck. His phone was on the table. I took it. My hands were shaking, but I knew I had to see it. This wasn't curiosity, it was survival. Locked screen. I tried the obvious dates. His birthday, nothing. Our anniversary, nothing. The day we met, nothing. Then a sad certainty hit me. He would never choose something meaningful to us. I tried his office number. It unlocked. The moment the screen lit up, my stomach twisted. There weren't photos of another woman, no flirty messages, no hidden affair. It was worse. There were conversations with his friend about legal terms, about assets, about financial maneuvers, about guarantees. And then a sentence that made my vision blur. As soon as she signs the power of attorney, I can transfer the rest. The rest. I was the rest. I kept scrolling, even with my heart racing and dread trying to paralyze me. I saw deleted messages, still recorded in the system. Conversations with his mother, Edna. Maya still keeps financial things in her name. And Edna's reply, "You need to take charge of that soon, Damon. A woman who manages her own life becomes a problem later on." At that moment, the floor disappeared beneath me. For years, I'd thought she was just a difficult mother-in-law. But no, she was complicit. She helped reinforce the belief that I shouldn't have anything truly mine. I closed the phone, set it back exactly where it had been, and sat there frozen. My body knew before my mind did. It was only a matter of time before Damon discovered the apartment, and when he did, he'd try to take it. That thought followed me like a shadow. Over the next few days, his behavior worsened, not loudly, but strategically. He watched me much closer, commented more on my schedule, questioned small expenses, asked about where I went, all with a soft voice, almost tender, but I could feel the calculation in every syllable. One afternoon, when I tried to leave to pick up some groceries, he threw a question into the air. "Why have you been going out so much, Maya?" "I need some air," I answered. He smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was diagnosis. "It's curious you need air right now." Right then, I felt it. He was starting to suspect something. He didn't know what yet, but he knew something was outside his control, and for Damon, that was unacceptable. I began going to the apartment more often, like a sanctuary, a place to remind myself I existed outside his shadow. I took clothes, documents, memories he had no right to touch. And the more I leaned toward that freedom, the more Damon sensed it. Until the day the first direct confrontation happened. A confrontation I didn't know then, but one that would begin the rupture. Because men like Damon cannot stand losing territory, especially when they suspect the woman is reclaiming her life somewhere he can't reach. And when they sense that, the danger changes shape. Some days don't begin with a storm. They begin with silence. And the silence that morning was so strange, so heavy. It felt like it was announcing something big, something I'd been sensing for weeks but hadn't yet named. I woke up before Damon, sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, trying to understand why my chest felt so tight. It was as if my body was warning me that something important was about to happen, something that would change everything. When he finally came downstairs, he didn't greet me with a kiss or his usual mechanical good morning. He just ran his hand across the table, like checking for dust. Then he opened the drawer where I kept some of my documents. Without asking, without looking at me, without acknowledging I existed in the room. He picked up a sheet, put it back, and slammed the drawer harder than necessary. And then came the silence. The kind that is more dangerous than any shout. I was in the kitchen when I heard his voice. "Maya, sit down." The tone wasn't a request. It was a command. When I reached the living room, he had already placed a large envelope on the table. He sat slowly, folded his hands, leaned forward, and smiled. And a chill crawled up my spine. It wasn't a smile of affection. It was a smile of someone about to claim something. "You know, love, after the inheritance, I realized we still have a few unresolved matters. Things responsible couples need to align." Responsible couples. That phrase always meant one thing. You're about to lose autonomy, but I'm going to make you believe it's love. I sat down carefully. He pushed the envelope toward me. "I did this for us, to simplify everything, to make your life easier." I opened the envelope. My hands shook. My throat dried. My heart pounded so hard I heard it. It was a broad power of attorney, the broadest kind. A document that would allow Damon to sign contracts in my name, manage my bank accounts, make legal and financial decisions on my behalf, sell property under my name, transfer assets, gain full control of my financial life, including the apartment, the only place in the world he didn't know existed. Air left my lungs as if someone had pressed my chest with both hands. He watched my face, like a predator watching a prey's reaction before the final move. "Just sign here, love." He flipped the document over and pointed to his signature already at the top. I already did my part. My God. It felt like he was saying, "I already tightened the rope. All you have to do is slip your head through." He slid his pen toward me. The same polished pen he used at the office, a symbol of his authority, his confidence, his coldness. My hand picked it up, automatically, conditioned by years of compliance, by fear. He leaned back in his chair, shoulders relaxing, because he thought he had already won. But something inside me refused to die. I took a breath, looked at the document, looked at him, and suddenly, everything lined up. The calculated touch after the inheritance, the speakerphone conversation, the sudden need for renovations, the watchful concern, the schedule changes, his discomfort with my locked drawers, his anger when I didn't hand him my phone. He didn't want a wife. He wanted property. I raised my eyes. Damon, I want to read this carefully. His smile collapsed, millimeter by millimeter. The mask slipped, just enough for me to see the cracks. This is unnecessary, Maya. It's a standard document. You're complicating things. I gave him a neutral smile, the kind women in danger learn to use so the situation doesn't ignite. Still, if it's so simple, then there's no problem in me reading it first. His jaw tightened. Something inside him lit, and not with affection. So you don't trust me? It was emotional blackmail, pure, direct, precisely executed. But this time, I didn't fall. I trust you, but I've learned from you that important decisions should be made responsibly. I handed the pen back, the pen he thought would be my surrender. He grabbed it too hard. The metal clicked sharply against the table. When he stood up, he inhaled slowly, but it wasn't a breath of calm. It was frustration, tension, control slipping through his fingers. Fine, he said, voice low and tight. Read it, but don't take too long. He turned away, didn't look at me, walked up the stairs with footsteps that echoed a warning. You have no idea what you just started. And I knew I was right. I knew I couldn't sign. I knew I had saved myself. But I also knew Damon wouldn't let it go. My refusal had created the first crack in a system of control he had built over years. And men like him do not forgive women who begin to wake up. That document wouldn't have my signature, but it would have consequences. Consequences I wasn't yet ready to face. There's a kind of silence that isn't calm. It's a threat. And that was exactly the silence Damon began cultivating in our house after I refused to sign the power of attorney. There was no argument, no fight, no slammed doors. He simply stopped. Stopped speaking to me, stopped touching me, stopped showing even the thinnest layer of emotion. And that emptiness filled the house like a low, persistent fever, the kind that weakens you without killing you outright. I noticed the shift at the very first breakfast. He was sitting at the table, reading on his phone, coffee already poured, but not for me. He always used to leave a cup out for me, even if without real affection, at least out of habit. That morning, there was only one place set, and the rest of the table looked untouched, like nothing in that house was actually lived in. "Did you sleep well?" I asked, trying to break the ice. He took 3 long seconds before responding, eyes still on his screen. "Mm-hmm." And that was it. Right then, I felt something recalibrate inside him, not to release control, but to reinforce it in a different way. Damon wasn't the kind of man who lost his temper. He didn't yell, he didn't insult, he didn't make explicit threats. He threatened with absence. His affection was a faucet he opened or closed depending on my submission, and during that period, he shut it tight. I tried talking, he didn't answer. I tried touching his hand, he pulled away. If I asked anything about dinner, he replied, "Do whatever you want," but in a tone that made it clear nothing I did would be right. Men like Damon have a terrible skill. They make you feel guilty without saying a word. In the following days, the house became so quiet it felt eerie. No TV noise, no casual comments, no forced smiles. Just calculated footsteps, drawers closing softly, and stares that weighed more than any argument. And under all that silence, a new feeling grew. Fear. The peak came one night when he walked into the bedroom with his ever-present briefcase. I was sitting on the bed folding clothes when he tossed a crumpled piece of paper onto my nightstand. A quick, irritated gesture, unmasked. "It was on the floor," he said. But it hadn't fallen. I knew that. He'd placed it there deliberately. When he stepped into the shower, I opened it slowly. It was a draft of a retroactive prenuptial agreement. Retroactive. As if I had signed it before the marriage. As if nothing that was mine had ever been mine. As if my entire history had passed through his hands before I even existed to him. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. This wasn't just control. It was erasure. I sat on the floor holding that paper and realized my life had become a chessboard. And I was the piece he moved at will, except this time, I had resisted. When he came back from the shower, he sensed something. He always sensed when I was afraid. Maybe because fear makes manipulation easier. He looked at me slowly, for several long seconds. His stare was clinical, surgical, analyzing my reaction like an investor monitoring risk. "Everything okay, Maya?" he asked, voice calm, too calm. His calm was always worse than anger. "I'm fine," I said, swallowing the tremor. He took 2 steps closer, held my chin between his fingers, not tenderly, but possessively. "I always know when you're hiding something from me." My heart nearly stopped. He released my face and added, "And I'm going to find out." That sentence sliced through me like a knife. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't intimidation. It was a promise. A promise from a man who did not tolerate losing ground. When he turned off the lamp and lay down, I sat in the dark for minutes, shaking uncontrollably. That was when I understood. I wasn't living with a husband anymore. I was living with a danger. The next morning, I did something he didn't notice, and it changed my destiny. I took the apartment key, still sewn inside my purse, and sat on the edge of the bed with it tucked inside my palm. It was small, cold, unremarkable, but in that suffocating silence, it pulsed like something alive. It was my safe territory, my place where he didn't exist, my chance to breathe outside his shadow. That same week, I began discreetly moving my things. Important documents, clothes I might need suddenly, old photos, my aunt's keepsakes, small objects with emotional value. Each trip to the apartment felt like lifting my head above water. 5 minutes there were worth hours of survival. But Damon began sensing a shift. Not because I told him anything, but because I changed. The woman who used to lower her head wasn't lowering it as easily. The woman who used to say, "okay," had started asking why. And he felt the difference. Men like him always do. Then the turning point came. I was leaving the house with the excuse of grabbing bread. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. As I walked past him, he lifted his eyes slowly. No smile, no question, no complaint. Just one sentence. "You've been acting different, Maya." My heart turned cold. "Different how?" I asked. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers interlocked, a pose of soft intimidation he'd mastered perfectly. "I always know when someone's hiding something from me." The same sentence from the night before, but now it carried a new tone, a new temperature, a new threat. I forced a smile, but my knees weakened. He didn't know about the apartment, not yet, but he knew I was waking up. And for Damon, that was betrayal. I stepped out of the house with my heart racing, the apartment key weighing inside my purse like a verdict, and as my feet hit the sidewalk, one unbearable certainty took over my whole body. I could never sleep in that house again. I couldn't breathe in that marriage anymore. I couldn't wait for Damon to decide my fate for me. That night, for the first time, I chose myself. I grabbed my purse, grabbed the key, grabbed my fear, and I went to the apartment. I closed the door behind me and felt the air rush back into my lungs. It was the first step toward freedom, and Damon hadn't even started unraveling yet. I always thought Damon would explode one day. But no, men like him don't explode. They calculate the exact moment when an explosion is useful. And that day, it was useful. I had spent the night at the apartment. I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in years. The sensation of sleeping inside a silence that didn't punish me. I made coffee, I opened the windows, I breathed without asking permission. But peace doesn't last long when a man who thrives on control realizes he's lost it. My phone started trembling on the counter. First, a call, then another, then a barrage of messages, not from a worried husband, from someone who sensed the leash snapping. "You left without telling me. This is ridiculous. Come back now. Don't make me go after you." Each message dropped heavier than the last. But the one that split something inside me was this: if you don't want to be part of my life, I can take you out of it. I read that sentence 3 times. My whole body froze. Take you out of it. Not poetic, not figurative, not frustration. A threat. Cold, practical, delivered like he was talking about removing a broken appliance. My stomach twisted. My hands went slick. A heat climbed up my chest. The kind of heat women feel when they suddenly understand with absolute clarity that a line has been crossed. I breathed, slowly, steadily. I had to go back to the house, not to stay, but because the last pieces of my life were still there. And because part of me needed to see him, to confirm in his eyes what my instincts already knew. He was never on my side. He was always on the side of control. I grabbed my coat, grabbed my phone, and left. When I walked into the house, the air felt altered, warped, too still. He was standing by the stairs, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes bright with something that wasn't anger. It was panic. Panic that his control was slipping. "You turned off your phone," he said, voice low, too low. "I needed time," I replied. He laughed, a short, dry, humorless sound. "Time? You abandon me in the middle of the night and think you deserve time?" My grip tightened on my purse strap. "I didn't abandon you. I protected myself." Right there, that sentence cracked his mask. "You think I would ever do something to you?" His voice softened, falsely offended. And before I could breathe, he added with clinical precision, "I only do what needs to be done." The air evaporated from the room. I stepped back, and he noticed. He saw the fear in my face. And when a controlling man realizes you fear him, he thinks he's already won. "Show me your phone," he demanded. "No. Now, Maya." He tried to snatch it with force, real force, enough to hurt. And that's when he made the mistake, the fatal mistake. When he grabbed my phone, the screen lit up, and he saw it. Saw the saved contact. Renee Porter, attorney. His eyes widened, his chest rose sharply, and for 1 second, his face drained of all color. "You talked to a lawyer?" His voice was too calm, too smooth. It was the calm that comes right before a predator attacks. "Yes," I said. I needed to protect myself. The words shattered between us like glass. He didn't speak, but the silence was violent, deadly. A silence that screamed, "You will pay for this." When he finally opened his mouth again, he wasn't my husband anymore. "So it's war." I don't know if it was the tone, the eyes, The realization that he finally understood I wasn't a piece on his board anymore. But something snapped inside him. "You think you're going to win?" he shouted. "You think anyone will believe you? I took care of you. I built everything for us. And this is how you repay me?" He stepped forward, another step, and another, each one pushing me toward the wall. "You're nothing without me. You're throwing your life away. You're destroying everything I created." His face was inches from mine. I could smell the panic on him. Male panic is a weapon, and he wielded it like one. My back hit the wall. His shadow swallowed my space. But then, destiny intervened. A soft, trembling voice came from the stairs. "Dad, why are you talking to her like that?" Layla, his daughter. She froze on the last step, eyes darting between us. Fear, disbelief, heartbreak blooming all at once. Damon spun toward her, too fast. "This doesn't concern you," he snapped. But Layla didn't step back. For the first time, she didn't retreat. "I heard you," she said, voice breaking. "I heard you yesterday, on the phone. You don't want what's best for her. You want control." His face drained. "Layla, this is not—" "No," she shouted. "No," she shouted. "You always expect everyone to obey you." I had never seen Damon lose air like that. Layla hit the center of his armor, the fear of losing authority. Then came the second twist, the one he never saw coming. At the top of the stairs stood Edna, his mother, the woman who always defended him, who always said I was dramatic, who always said men knew better. She had heard everything, and she whispered a sentence that tore the room open. "Damon, you went too far." He stared at her like she had stabbed him. "Mother, you too?" And in that moment, I understood something profound. When a controlling man loses control to more than one woman at once, he collapses. With 3 pairs of eyes on him, mine, Layla's, and Edna's, his narrative fell apart. And that's when he made the final, irreversible mistake. His confession. Raw, ugly, unfiltered. She was supposed to sign. Everything would have been fixed if she'd just done what I said. Silence. Real silence. The kind that alters the air. Layla stepped back. Edna covered her mouth. And I saw it. The exact moment Damon realized he had said too much. I didn't need evidence. He was. I drew in a breath, the deepest in months, and said, "I'm not coming back. I'm not your property, and I will not live in fear of you." He froze, completely, like a machine shutting down. And I walked out the door, out of the script he had written for my life, out of the cage he spent years building. For the first time, the ground beneath my feet belonged to me. And I had no idea how powerful or how costly this turning point would be. When the door of that house closed behind me after his outburst, I felt 2 sensations rise inside me at the same time: fear and relief. Fear of what could come next. Relief because, for the first time, I had walked out without promising to come back. I stepped down the driveway with shaky legs and a heart that felt too big for my chest, but with a new certainty guiding every step. I wasn't running away. I was leaving. I got into my car like someone crawling into a lifeboat after abandoning a burning ship. I turned the key without remembering how to breathe, and only realized I had made it to the apartment when I was already parked outside the building. I didn't remember the road. Just his voice echoing in my mind. She was supposed to sign. Everything would have been fixed if she'd just done what I said. He had exposed himself. To his daughter, to his mother, to me, to the silence of the entire house that could no longer protect him. And still, The old voice inside me whispered, "Are you sure you're not overreacting? Did it really need to be this drastic?" I climbed the stairs slowly, carrying not just my bags, but the weight of every year I had swallowed these doubts. When the apartment door shut behind me, a different kind of silence wrapped around me. Not the silence he used as punishment. A silence that simply meant, no one is watching you. I dropped my purse on the floor, sat on the small couch, and exhaled. And then, gently, out loud, I said, I left. I really left. The crying came after that. Not the desperate crying of someone begging to be understood, but the crying of someone mourning and rebuilding at the same time. I cried for the years I lost, for the version of myself I buried, for the woman he tried to break, for the woman I had become in spite of him. When the tears finally slowed, I picked up my phone. His messages flashed on the screen. "You'll regret this. You have nothing without me. Don't throw away our life over a tantrum." And then, almost immediately, another notification. "Lila. Maya, are you safe? I'm sorry, I didn't know it was this bad." My chest tightened. She was another casualty of his version of reality, the version where he was always the victim, always the hero, always right. I typed slowly. "I'm alive, and for the first time in a long while, I feel safe." She didn't respond right away, probably replaying the moment when her father's mask shattered right in front of her. I called Renee. I didn't need to explain much. "He lost control," I said. "Are you at the apartment?" she asked. "Yes." "Then from this moment on, you don't go back in that house alone, and Damon does not contact you directly anymore. Everything goes through me. Understood?" I hesitated. Years of appeasing, years of minimizing, years of choosing calm over truth. "Understood," I whispered. In the days that followed, Damon changed strategies. He stopped sending short, angry messages. Instead, he sent paragraphs. Long, polished, manipulative paragraphs full of emotional accounting. I did everything for us. I only wanted to protect our future. You're being influenced. You're destroying our family. Renee read them all before I did. "This is psychological pressure," she said. "He's trying to exhaust you so you'll give up your legal ground. This is tactic, not love." Hearing that was like someone finally cleaning a fogged mirror. His mother, Edna, tried calling too. Left voicemails accusing me of tearing the family apart, of hiding assets, of being ungrateful. For a second, I almost answered. Almost stepped back into the role of the good wife, the reasonable woman, the one who bends. But I wasn't her anymore. I blocked the number. It was one of the most liberating taps I've ever made on a screen. Meanwhile, the practical parts of my new life began taking shape. Renee and I met to outline the next steps. "The apartment protected you, Maya," she said, tapping a stack of documents. "With it, you have your own address, your own footing, your own legal stability. If you didn't have this place, he would have pushed you to stay under his roof, on his terms, on his rules. That's how men like him maintain power." I stared at the key on the table. The same key I hid for months with fear and guilt. "So I was right not to tell him?" I asked quietly. Renee looked at me with a calm certainty I didn't yet have. "You followed your instincts, and your instincts saved you. If you'd told him then, there's a real chance that apartment wouldn't be in your name anymore." A breath left me. A long, deep, freeing breath. For the first time, someone wasn't calling me dramatic, or ungrateful, or suspicious, or irrational. Someone was saying, "You protected yourself, and you were right." Learning to rebuild wasn't instant. I had to relearn how to live alone, how to sleep without anticipating footsteps in the hallway. how to open cabinets without worrying someone would rearrange everything out of spite, how to breathe without checking my tone, my timing, my decisions. A few days later, Layla knocked on my door. When I opened it, she looked smaller, younger, uncertain. "Can I come in?" she asked. She sat on the couch, hands tight in her lap. "I heard everything that day," she whispered. "I never saw my dad like that. I didn't know. I thought you exaggerated. I thought you made things bigger than they were." I touched her hand. "Layla, you don't need to choose sides. You don't need to defend me. You don't need to fight him. Just see things clearly, in your own time." She broke. She cried, and she leaned into me. And in that moment, I realized something profound. When one woman frees herself, other women around her breathe easier. I wasn't just saving myself. I was altering the path for her, too. As the legal process moved forward, as Damon lost the narrative he worshipped, as Layla finally saw the truth, as Renee guided me through the maze of paperwork and protection, my life slowly reorganized itself, not around fear, but around possibility. Looking back now, I see something with crystal clarity. The apartment I hid with guilt wasn't an act of betrayal. It was an act of survival. He thought he could take me out of his life whenever he wanted. But in the end, I'm the one who walked away, standing, with my own key, and for the first time, with a life that begins and ends in my name. There are doors we close while crying. There are doors we close while shaking. And there are doors we close knowing we will never again go back to the side we came from. That's how my new chapter started. Not with shouting, not with fireworks, but with the soft sound of a door closing behind me in my aunt's apartment, the place everyone thought was just an inheritance. But it was my salvation. That night, I sat on the living room floor. Plain tile, no designer rug, no staged furniture. But it was a floor that didn't judge me. A floor that didn't ask where I'd been or why. A floor that was mine. And I cried. I cried like I was finally handing my body back to myself. I cried for holding so much in for so long. I cried for the woman I was before him. I cried for the woman he tried to destroy. And I cried, most of all, for the woman being born right there. Quiet, exhausted, but whole. I used to think starting over would be loud. But for me, starting over sounded like breathing. My breathing. Without fear, without surveillance, without explanations. In the days that followed, guilt tried to creep back in. Guilt for leaving, guilt for hiding the apartment, guilt for not trying harder. But then I realized something brutal. I only felt guilty because I'd been trained to. Trained to believe love means enduring anything. Trained to believe autonomy is disrespect. Trained to believe that his version of happiness mattered more than my slow bleeding underneath it. Healing doesn't start the day we leave. Healing starts the day we understand why we stayed so long. And I stayed because I had nowhere to go. Until I did. The apartment wasn't just property. It was the first place in years where I could exist without fear of being punished. In that space, I relearned small things. Cooking without someone evaluating every receipt. Opening drawers without someone rifling through them later. Sleeping without checking the locks 10 times from sheer panic. Waking up without bracing for someone else's mood. Freedom doesn't crash in with fireworks. It sneaks in when you realize you're breathing easier than you were yesterday. Little by little, the world started gaining color again. I bought a new curtain, put a plant on the windowsill, changed a hallway bulb by myself, bought a small rug. Every tiny change seemed to whisper, "You exist. You matter. You get to choose." Even my reflection shifted. The woman with dull eyes gave way to someone with a different kind of light. Fragile, but real. Then came the most unexpected part of my rebuilding, Lila. One day she knocked on my door. When I opened it, she stood there, head down, eyes red. "Can I come in?" she asked. She walked in slowly, like stepping into a new reality she didn't quite understand yet. She sat on the couch and stayed quiet for a few seconds, the kind of silence that begs for permission to hurt. "I saw everything that day," she said. "I'd never seen my dad like that before." I took a breath. "Lila, your dad has good sides, but he also has shadows. And I spent years trying to shine light into places he refused to look at." She started to cry. "I thought you exaggerated," she admitted. "I thought you made everything bigger than it really was. But I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes." I reached for her hand. "You don't have to pick a side. You don't have to defend me or fight him. All you have to do is see the truth on your own timeline." She broke then, leaned into my shoulder and hugged me. It wasn't a hug about me. It was about her realizing his behavior wasn't normal. About realizing women are not supposed to live afraid inside their own home. About realizing she, too, had been molded by a controlling father. In that moment, I finally understood something that took me years. When one woman frees herself, other women around her finally exhale. I wasn't just saving myself. I was clearing a path for her. With the legal process moving forward, Renee guiding every step, Layla seeing more clearly, and Damon losing the power he once held unquestioned, my life began to reorganize. Not fast, not dramatically, but solidly. Day by day, I understood something that hurt and healed at the same time. Damon never loved me as a person. He loved me as an extension of himself. And the day I stopped existing as an extension, he didn't fall apart from heartbreak. He fell apart from lack of control. So let me say this to you, woman to woman. The kind of love that needs you to disappear is not love. It's strategy, it's power, it's a prison. And only those who've lived it know the weight of finally saying, enough. Today, when I walk into this apartment, I run my hand along the wall like a thank you. Because it was this quiet, invisible, discreet place that protected me when I still didn't know how to protect myself. This secret held my life together while I was trying not to collapse. If I could talk to the version of me who was terrified he'd find out about it, I'd say, you weren't hiding an apartment. You were guarding your chance to exist. And I exist now, with strength, with calm, with the right to come and go, with hope, and, most importantly, with the certainty that I will never again let anyone convince me that love means ownership. As I finish telling you my story, I only wish for one thing: that you, who are here with me now, never forget that you deserve to own your own life. And if someone is trying to shrink you, it's because they're afraid of your real size. Thank you for staying with me to the end. Please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone whose life you know it might touch. And thank you for listening to me be reborn. Because that's what this was. I was reborn.